got down to the river and now we're just going to get set up for the day. So we're just going to run through what we're going to use today. So what I've gone for today is a 9-foot 5-weight rod there. You can go with a shorter 4-weight rod as well in some of the rivers. So just depending on a few different things, you might sort of chop and change between a 4 and a 5-weight. So if you were fishing a small river and there was going to be quite a lot of trees overhanging and things like that, you might go with a 4-weight just to give you that little bit shorter rod to get around some of the snags and the trees and stuff. So we're fishing a slightly larger river today. There's a few bigger fish in here, and also it's a little bit more open, so I'm not going to be fishing around too many trees and things like that. There's also potential for a little bit of wind to come up today as well, so just gone with the 9-foot 5-weight, which is still going to be light enough to give me a good bit of fun on these fish, but also a little bit of power there just to push into the wind if I need to, just to make sure I'm getting those flies exactly where I want them to go. So got our 9-foot 5-weight there, got our large arbor reel, which isn't too important in the little rivers here, but just a nice reel there that's going to do the job if you do happen to hook a good fish and it goes downstream. You just want to have a good drag system there. Nothing too fancy with the fly line, just a weight forward floating line is more than enough for this sort of thing. So just a good floating line with a good taper that's going to just give you a bit of power to turn those flies over is ideal. So that's the rod that we're going to go with today. As I said, you can drop down to 4 weights or 3 weights a bit later in the season when we start fishing dry flies, but we are going to be throwing 2 flies, one of which is going to be a weighted nymph. So we do want just a little bit of power there just to make sure that we can present those flies exactly where we want it to go. So pretty happy with the 9-foot 5-weight for today. On the end of the fly line there, I've just attached a 9-foot 5x leader. So just a store-bought 9-foot 5-weight 5x leader is a good starting point, and that's going to give me enough room there to attach the first fly to. So what I'm going to do now is tie on about 4 feet or so of either 6 to 7x tippet, and that's going to make a dropper that I'm going to attach the dry fly to, and then on the end of that tippet I'm going to attach the nymph as well. So I'm going to go with some 6x tippet today. As we said, there's a few bigger fish that get around in this river system, so I think the 7x might be a little bit too light for today, but you certainly want to be fishing as light a possible tippet as you possibly can get away with for this nymph under dry fly fishing. We really want to be presenting that fly as naturally as we possibly can to the fish, so that lighter tippet is really going to allow us to get a nice drag-free drift, and the fish is also less likely to see that really fine tippet. So 6 or 7x tippet is ideal for this, and I always carry both with me up the river, and if I think the fish are being a little bit spooky or something because my tippet might be a little bit too heavy, I can just go down a size and that should be good. So I've just attached the little dropper there with just a triple surgeon's knot, and that was just about 4 feet or so of our 6x tippet. I'm going to cut the little top tag off there, and then that dropper is going to be where I'll attach my my dry fly. So just again, we've got our 9-foot 5x leader all the way down to our little dropper knot there, and then about 4 feet of 6x tippet on the end of that. And now we'll have a look at some flies that we might use for today. So we'll start with looking at some of the dry flies that we're potentially going to use today. So I've got a box put together here that could be a good selection for the day. So what we really want to start off with, given that we're going to be fishing a dry fly with a weighted nymph underneath, is we probably want a nice buoyant dry fly. So things that we've got here that imitate terrestrial insects are really good. So we get a lot of grasshoppers around here up in the Midlands, things like blowflies, stone flies, things like that. So you just want a nice buoyant dry fly that's also going to imitate whatever you're trying to imitate there as well. So grasshoppers being a really good really good choice because the fish is pretty likely to come up and eat that at various times of the year as well. So that can often be a good choice. Things like blowflies are always around. Being a bit of farmland up through here, there's plenty of those, so the fish are pretty likely to have seen blowflies before, and that can be a pretty good option for them to come up and grab that. So we still want to give ourselves a chance for that fish to come up and eat that dry fly. We don't just want to put something on that there's no chance of that fish eating. The real benefit of this technique is that it does give us that two-way bet. So we're giving ourselves a chance for the fish to either eat the dry fly or the nymph underneath. So try and pick a dry fly that the fish are still going to eat, and that's going to increase your chances of that two-way bet sort of really working well for you. So what we might start with today is just a little blowfly pattern. So this is a pattern that we use a lot both in Tasmania and New Zealand, so works really well to imitate that blowfly, but also other things like little beetles and other little bugs that might get around. So it's a nice bushy fly. It's got the white dubbing there on the top as well, so it acts as a really good indicator for that nymph. So when that gets pulled under, we know that a fish has taken that nymph, and that's really what we want, is to be able to detect those takes when that fish has taken the nymph. So they'll certainly also come up and have a look at this, I'm sure, later through the day. It's a nice warm day today out here, so pretty good chance of seeing a bit of dry fly activity later on in the day as it warms up. But that's also going to act as a nice indicator for us there. So there we go, we've just attached our little dry fly there. That's the little blowfly pattern to our little dropper that's on the end of our 9-foot 5x leader. So that's that one there. And then we'll slide down, we'll have a look at a few nymphs here as well. So what I've got here is pretty standard sort of nymph box that I use on all the rivers in Tasmania. So what I like to do is try and separate these into the bead sizes that we use. So anything from a 2.5mm to a 4mm bead is ideal here in Tasmania, depending on the flow rates that you get in the rivers. So later in the summer and things, when the flow rates do get a little bit low, a 2.5mm bead is going to be more than enough to get that fly down through that water. Earlier in the season, you might find that you get a bit of rain and the river levels really rise a lot, so you might need to go to a 3.5 or a 4mm bead. So somewhere around a 3mm is probably going to be ideal for us here today. We've got a sort of moderate flow rate, so somewhere around a 3mm is still going to get us down, but it's not going to be too heavy that it's going to sink too quickly and get caught on the bottom. So we've got things here like a lot of pheasant tail nymphs is really common things for us to use, and also the little tag nymphs, so the pink and orange tag nymphs work particularly well too. That tends to be the two main varieties of nymphs that we use. The fish aren't going to be too fussy on what it is, as long as it's getting down to the right depth. So really what we're looking for is to get that fly down into that water where the fish are sitting. Not so worried about what type of pattern it is. So any of these pheasant tail or tag nymph varieties are going to be more than suitable for a fish, and they certainly will accept that as it comes past. So we might start off with our little 3mm pheasant tail nymph for today. And as we said, I'm going to attach that just onto the end of that 4 feet or so of 6x tippet that we attached to our 9-foot leader. You can use any knot for this, just your favourite sort of knot to attach a fly to your line, that's fine. It's going to be more than strong enough. So that's our little nymph there on the end. Just a little mayfly nymph really, but it could imitate a few different little insects that are going to be emerging throughout the day, so that's going to be a good little bet, and if we can get that down in front of a fish, I'm sure they'll be pretty happy with that. So that's the rig that we're going to use. So we've got our nymph and our dry fly all rigged up there, ready to go. Got our 9-foot 5-weight rod. We'll just Hook that in there. And then we're all set and ready to go for the day. So we'll pack this up and go and jump in the river and see if we can get a fish on this rig. So let's go and get into it.